I'm good. I'm good. It's kind of late here, so I'm like having a cup of tea to make sure that I'm awake.
I'm having my coffee, so don't worry.
Awesome. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining and for supporting this little initiative I'm trying to do to bring people together during these super challenging times. So, welcome to Behind the Lens with Pallavi
Thank
Sharda.
you. Thanks for having me. No, it's great. I think anything that we can do to keep chatting with one another and keep the interconnectedness of our spirit alive is really important at this time. And it's been really inspiring to see everyone rise to the occasion. I mean, I'm actually quite bad at social media. So if someone else is like taking the lead, I'm like, sure, I'll do it. But if I was doing it, it would be bad.
No, but that's awesome, right? It also takes the support of amazing other talent coming forward and saying, let's come together. Because I think that's exactly what you said, the spirit, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's where my entire mind shift is right now, trying to celebrate that during these times rather than kind of feeling defeated. I think that's what keeps me going every single day, really.
100%. No, I think, there are always up days and down days, and I'm sure people will be commenting on this if they choose to, and I'd be really interested to hear how everyone's going, because everyone's in a different different country, different city with different levels of lockdown, and I think we're 2 months in now. I'm like gonna be really
Sorry, Pallavi, you broke up.
I was just saying that I think that I was just saying now that we're 2 months in, everyone's reality is crystallizing. And that's what's interesting about where we are now in this whole thing. Whereas 2 months ago, even a month ago, we were kind of like navigating, going, it could be anything. But I think the new normal is setting in. So for me, I'm living in, this is my brother's bedroom from when we were kids. I'm living with my parents after a long time. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think it's this aspect of this new normal and being able to do things you weren't able to do before, right? And really focusing on that. So that's beautiful. And that's really where I kind of was thinking I want to start this initiative, just to reach out to people and maybe inspire people and, just keep the spirits high.
Yes.
So I would love to know more about, well, firstly, I think we should tell everyone how we know each other and how we first met.
Yes. Why don't you tell that story?
Okay. So we actually met on, that was the first film I worked on when I moved to Bollywood. So for those that don't know, I'm actually a director. And I moved to Bollywood and I worked on Love Breakup Zindagi as an assistant director. And here comes Pallavi through the door with this bright smile and this amazing energy, super positive. I was like, hi, I'm Pallavi. And I was like, and I think I was taking care of you at that point, I remember. And I was like, oh, hi, I'm Gloria. And it was just like instant, where I felt so comfortable. And we developed a great friendship from there working on that film. And I had a lot of respect for you.
Thank you. It's very sweet. No, likewise. I think for me, it was so nice to see that there was another woman that had traveled across the seas for her love of film. We were both quite unique that way on that film set. And I think we had an intrinsic understanding of what it is to have to leave your home country to try and make it in the film world, just because your background lends itself to that. And I don't know how it was for you, what took you from, it was Dubai that you came from to India at the time. And for me it was Australia. So it was kind of like this common consciousness which happens, I think, with diasporas. And you're always considered the NRI, the not required Indian, when you're in India. And
Exactly.
Don't anyone say that to me. You say it one more time and you're gonna, there's mukka in your face. Because it comes from a love of country. Why else would we move back? And I think that's what was resonant when I met you. I could tell that was the case. And but then you left Bombay shortly after. When did you leave?
I left. I was there for about 5 years, and then I got married. And love brought me all the way back to Dubai. But I completely agree with you. And I think that's what we really want to talk about today, right? Like, what does it feel like to live between these two worlds? I as well, I was never raised in India. My home was always Dubai, and I'd lived in many different countries around the world. And I said, I want to pursue film, and why wouldn't I do it in my home country? But there are a lot of interesting things that come on that journey, right? And I'd really like us to share that today, because I think that's something that we don't talk about often enough. And it's a very interesting thing. So I would first like to start a step back in understanding and asking you, when did you first find your passion? What was that feeling? What was that entire emotional and mental journey for you to be?
Oh gosh, I was very young. It was obvious when, like, since I was a toddler. I used to dance a lot. That was a big part of who I am, and the rhythm came from Indian dance and music. And I learned Bharatanatyam from the age of 3. So I started as a Bharatanatyam dancer. And then as you grow older in a country which is predominantly a white country, I'm just going to put this down. Is that, no, that's not going to work like that. But predominantly a white country, you realize that the space for you in the arts is limited. That you will always be relegated to the community space, or, like the Diwali function, or we need a token Indian person. And I think that's what was becoming apparent to me, that this wasn't just a hobby. It wasn't just something I wanted to do on the weekend with the Maharashtrian Mandal or the Hindi Niketan, like, you know what I mean? Gujarati Association. I wanted to do this.
This was real. This is.
And I think I did a lot of pioneering work when I was very young, because I was very active as a dancer in the community. I get asked. I taught a dance class at Melbourne University. I developed a course, and I started university when I was very young. I was 16 when I started, and I was super gung ho. I mean, you've met me. Like, I'm charged when and you met me in a very good space, because that was a very safe set, I'll say, that promoted all of us to. And I know Sahal's floating around. I don't know if he's joined us, but he's one of the reasons that was such a great, our director, for those who know Sahal guys. He also, having traveled and lived abroad, understood a little bit of our perspectives and didn't treat us like outsiders. So that's who I always say that Love Breakups and McGee was one of the few sets in India where I got to be myself. But the person I was before I went to India was very enthusiastic about this dream that I'd had since I was a kid, and I was going to make it happen. I went to drama school in Melbourne while I was at law school, and I was a bit of an overachiever. Like, I was like, your classic Indian nerd kid who's getting good marks and ticking all the boxes. Could make rotis when I was 9. Like perfect NRI. And then was like, oh no, like, if I want to stay here, I'm gonna have to become a lawyer, which is not what I want to do necessarily. I wanted to be a journalist. So I used to host a radio show while I was at university. I was super active at uni. Like, a lot of my life pre-Mumbai, I'd already lived a life before Mumbai. I came to Mumbai when I was 20, 21. But I'd already lived, and already lived in France. I'd already done an exchange program there. So, because my whole thing was, I want to experience everything I can experience, so that I know that I need to go to Bombay if I have to. You know what I mean? Like, I had to tick off these boxes. And waited for something else to grab me.
Exactly. I feel exactly the same.
Yeah. And so you get there, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I got to do this. But then no one understands that you've already been through certain trauma to get here.
Yes.
That trauma of double migration has occurred as soon as you step off the plane into Bombay. And, you've already grown up navigating your identity in one country. Now you're going, I'm going to navigate it. And Mumbai is not where my parents are from. They were from a different part of India. So it's, being Indian meant something completely different, and also when you're an NRI, the stereotype's kind of true. Like, we are more conscientious about being Indian and Hindi and this and that. And then you turn up to Bombay, everyone's like, why are you saying namaste?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, isn't that what's meant to happen? And they literally, I felt like a village idiot. People were like, we say hi and hello here. And so I was at navigation. All of a sudden, you're like, wait, how do I behave? What do I do? So yeah.
And it almost makes you go internal, right? Where you get to a point where suddenly the mirror flips. That's what I felt. And you begin to kind of question an external and internal process. That's what I was really, you know, my experience was.
Yeah, 100%. And then, you know, people used to say to me, Pallavi, you think too much. And I'd be like, dude, it takes a bit of thought to come here, you know, like it didn't just happen. And then you're trying to, and you know, it's classic, right? You got to be stupid if you're an actress. That was the other thing, like that I was facing, that classic. And I was 21, but I was, you know, I actually look similar now to what I did there. Like 9 years later, I was an older looking 21-year-old,
right?
Because I experienced the world and, you know, had knowing eyes. I think that's what it is. Whereas a lot of 21-year-olds in India are like wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, don't have that experience.
Exactly. And I think that's such a unique value that you bring with you, right? I think the fact that you celebrate that, it gives me goosebumps. I feel so proud to be speaking to a woman who is using that as her strength and using that that this is me, right? And I think that's one of the things that always gravitated me towards you, that you were always just showing up and you're like, this is me. Right? This is who I am. And I thought that energy right from the get-go. And as I followed your career forward, I really think that that is one of the most, that's why I say I feel the industry is very lucky to have you, because you're bringing that foundation that is inspiring. It inspires me. I find it very inspiring that I think many times in a creative field, and especially in industry like the film industry, there are a lot of external pressures that may make us question our identity, that may make us change our identity subconsciously or consciously. And here you are saying, you know, this is what I come with. And I come with all these experiences, your love of dance and how you bring that forward, and all these other beautiful moments that you have in your life that I think really make you stand out. Honestly, I really feel that.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, and I appreciate it so much, because I actually didn't have enough people saying these things to me at the time. I had a lot of people trying to tell me to pipe down, you know, and put me back in a box that was palatable, understandable, and bubbly, you know, like you need to be more bubbly. I was like, it's not a thing, dude. Like, what does it even mean?
Exactly.
And the funny part was, in like my first mainstream film as a quote unquote Bollywood actress heroine, Ranbir Kapoor's name was Bubbly, so I was just like, the dude's called Bubbly. That's really funny. But like nobody else found it funny. So I was like constantly like, there was this internal dialogue of like irony going on the whole time, because I was like, this is jokes, man. How can you really be saying this stuff and asking me to keep quiet? And I got told once I needed to improve my giggle by like a prospective manager / agent, going, your voice is so intimidating, the way you speak and the way you use language, so you need to improve your giggle. And I was just like, you're a woman. It was a woman saying it to me. And I think that was one of the moments where I was like, these are not my people, you know, this is not my tribe.
Exactly.
And that was what's hard, you know, when you get to that point where you're like, I've worked my whole life towards this fantasy, or this kind of idea of a dream and a goal, and you get there. Really, in a sense, I did get to that point, and I struggled hard for it. And then you get to that point, and then you're denigrated for having individuality.
Exactly.
That was hard.
And I think that's a really important point that you bring on. And I'd like to kind of bring that into the aspect of working, not only working between two cultures, but working in two different languages. And that can, you know, I'd like to hear about your experience of that, because I think, you know, sometimes we get projected onto how individual I am if I'm speaking my language and the way you want me to, for example, right? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on how, and your experience between two languages.
You know, the funny thing is, I speak fluent Hindi and I speak English. I don't know if you remember this, but I can switch accents. I used to speak in my Indian accent when I met you. Like, even if
I didn't
to you, I would have used my Aussie accent. You would have been the only one else. And that's probably why I think your presence on set helped me, because you were another foreign Indian girl. Like, I could be that version of myself, because you were quite unashamedly that, and unabashedly that. You know, you were like, this is me. You also brought yourself to the room. Whereas in other sets, you kind of like being demure and like the good Indian girl, and I would turn into this girl who talk like this, you know, like, which is not me. Like, I speak to my parents in an Indian. I just had dinner in an Indian accent with my parents. You know what I mean? Like, I still do that. But what it was like this reversal in a way. Like I became that good Indian girl when I was that person. I wasn't the confident Australian woman. And it's almost like two people. I've always been these two people.
Right.
So when I came to India, I didn't understand that, the reference points I had for a language and an accent didn't apply in modern day India.
Right.
And that was learning that has taken probably only come in the last few years. It took me a while because I'd be on sets and I would also, it's very alienating to speak to someone in an Australian accent when they're speaking to you in an Indian accent, particularly when you know how to and it's natural. Yes. I think it's a communication tool that I have where I code switch, and my accent automatically melds into the person with whom I'm speaking because it's a respect thing, I think,
Right.
like, it's just something that I've grown up doing, like, because you don't want to come across as different, as foreign. You want to be close as you can to the person that you're speaking to. So, and then I spoke fluent Hindi at home. For me, the Bollywood thing came from a love of Hindi. It came from a love of the language and the poetry and the music and I've seen every Bollywood film from the time of Rishikesh Mukherjee. My dad, the other day, we were listening to a song, and he says, "Ye kiska gaana hai? Kaun actor tha?" And I said, "Devanand." And he said, "Who was he?" And I said, "Nutan." He goes, "Kahan pe shoot hua tha?" I said, "Qutub Minar mein." Wow. I knew all of this since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was, I'm thinking of the film that Samne Wali Khirki. Anyway, someone can tell me which is the film with Devanand and Nutan with shot the song.
I'm sure they will. I'll leave that to them to tell you.
Yeah. But so that's what I'm saying. Like, I didn't come going, I'm a model, I'm this and like that. It didn't come from a valorized beauty place. It didn't come from a place of wanting to be famous. It didn't come from a place of the glamour. It really came because I was a Bharatanatyam dancer who spoke Hindi and wanted to perform and didn't have anywhere to go because I was Australian. And that's why it was heartbreaking, because it was like all of a sudden I was being asked to be this version who was fairer and skinnier and, you go and hang out here with this person, Falana, and I come from a really simple family from Delhi. So there was a very different value system.
Exactly. And I think those value systems, they get questioned quite a bit when you are in a field that is public, and you go through these roller coasters. I personally know I went through that when it came to using my language, speaking in Hindi, where my Hindi is definitely probably not as proficient as yours. I didn't grow up watching Bollywood cinema. I grew up watching international cinema. And I also felt that where, I used to work in the camera department, and being in that field, firstly being a woman was and then kind of trying to communicate in Hindi to have the orders done basically as to what my DOP is telling me, and having that constant barrier of judgment, right? But I think that's where I think the way you're handling it and the way that you have up till now is something that we can all learn from, because instead of it making it a negative thing and saying, okay, this is what I've experienced and this is what I'm going through and this is a block, here you are saying, you know what, this is how I can make that become a part of me and allow me to use that to shine with who I am. And I think I'd like to ask you how that interplays within being a woman in the industry. I'm just as another fellow woman, who and I think both of us are ones that are all about kind of pulling us together and really supporting one another, not for any gain of our own, but just to kind of have that greater
camaraderie.
Would you maybe share a bit about that?
I mean, I think, what was tough, again, I was always a girl's girl. I always had a lot of female friends. I had a lot of dude friends and guy friends as well. But like, I'm kind of a bit of a tomboy. I hate that word, but like, I only started wearing skirts when I was 16 or something. I had like really hairy legs, so I was never gonna. So you kind of become the masculine version of yourself in certain arenas. And I always disliked very judgy, competitive female energy. It was something that I couldn't, and cliquiness and all of those things. I was kind of a dorky kid. So like, when I came to India, I was like, whoa, I'm meant to now inhabit this version of femininity that actually isn't natural to me. And I tried to play that part, I tried to engage with what was expected and all that, but I became extremely unhappy. And I didn't realize what was making me unhappy. And there was always talk about my weight, that I was putting on a lot of weight. I had weight fluctuations because I had like a hormonal thing going on for the whole time I was there due to anxiety, and that's a female thing. But I had other women telling me that I'd put on weight. There was never empathy when it came to the external thing. Like, you have other women judging.
Yes.
And so like, you walk into a room, you could just see the eyes, like everyone's kind of like looking you up and down because they've all been through that, because there has been like an assault on the femininity of so many of these women that are in that space, particularly the women, especially in Bollywood, which is a toxic industry for women. I will say that, apart from the 5 or 6 or the 10 people that break through to the side of extreme privilege, just that one layer below, everyone's been through some severe toxicity, and I'm sure the people right at the top have as well. So that there was never an acknowledgement of that. I mean, obviously in the last couple of years with Me Too, and that was at a time when I was actively not working in India. So for me, it was, I looked at it from a different vantage point. But while I was there, I couldn't have those conversations. It wasn't considered brave. It was considered foolish. And, I would be killing my career, or somebody would be saying, I'll finish you in this industry. Agar teesre bande ko bataoge to, So it was a constant battle every single day. And I didn't have any mentors. I had not one person to say, I've been through this. Maybe I was so strong in my own resolve where I said, I'm going to be able to handle everything every day. And I maybe lost trust in people that they might want the best for me. But or maybe when I actually went to people feeling a little down, I didn't explain what the real issues were because I didn't know how to. I didn't have the language of talking about it yet. I've been empowered to do that. I think I've re-empowered myself recently. So as a woman, it's been a number of different journeys, I'll say, in this one journey. I maybe about 5 years ago, I really started to unravel and unpick what my time in India had been. And I made some very conscious decisions about how I wanted to lead my life and what I wanted to be as a person in front of the camera, and what negotiations I was willing to have in order to get there. So it's a thing.
I think that's a really valid point of what you said. How do I protect who I am at the same time as being able to pursue what it is that I love, right? Because I think even, being in front of the camera, even being behind the camera as a young, female director, there are also things that come with that, right? That how do I protect myself in wanting to tell the stories I want to tell or participate in the art that I want to without having this pressure on me of what I should be like or what I'm meant to say and be boxed in. I think that's a beautiful thing that you just addressed. And I thank you for being open about it, because I think many women are not. I think many women are kind of, even in my experience, I mean, I remember I was working as a second AC, and we were shooting a film in Thailand, and I was kicked off the set by a female choreographer because I was in track and trolley and doing it right, but the entire reason literally announced out loud was, she's a woman, she can't do it, move her. You get to these things and you realize that exactly what you said, everybody has a journey that they've gone through, right? Everybody's gone through that, but somehow we're still sugarcoating it, right?
I think we're still in that zone where we feel like this is what happens with all minorities, I think, is that you're fighting against the hegemony and the heteronormative kind of norms. And so you protect your own space and you don't bring others. And I think I'm really empowered by the fact that I'm Australian, in the sense that Australia is kind of the land of the underdog.
Right.
Like it's a nation built on that spirit. And I grew up when it was still Australia, in a sense of like I had to you know, I was like a hard, tough, rough Aussie girl in the backyard.
Right.
You know, like I grew up with the myth of Australia, very much so. The way we grow up with the myths of our countries and what that means for our identity. So when I came to India, I wore that on my sleeve. You know, like I wore that sense of, like, I found it a bit gross that people didn't stick up for those that were less empowered than them.
Yes.
Like I found that really weird and like just so weird to me. I was like, this is so uncool. Like, and it's kind of distasteful. How are you just blatantly behaving this way? And yeah, I just found it really weird that anyone would let someone who was getting bullied be bullied or bully someone else. You know, it was that. Yeah, I'm just like, love watching these like
yeah.
I think they're so
Me
cute.
too at the same
Yeah,
time.
guys, come
There's
on,
a lot of
we're
love
talking
coming
feminist.
through.
You're so sweet. What are they saying? Hi, Pallavi, how are
They're
you?
saying, okay, lots of love. Let's go from the top. Your favorite moment in making Besharam?
Oh God. Probably shooting the song Lut Gaye Tere Mohalle, which was my first ever big song shoot. And it was sort of like, that was the moment that the childhood dream came
right
to, you know, where it was like, okay, the big wedding sequence, lots of hundreds of dancers, you know, you've got great choreographers, a great song, and it's you're leading it, you know, and it was the first song of the film, and that was the childhood dream ticked then. Then amazing. I was like, now I can go.
And it's so incredible because you come with this amazing artistry of dance, right? And I think that's so special. It's such a, you bring, like, I see, whenever I see you dance, there's a sense of like truth in it. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you do an art, you can feel it when it's for the external, but when you dance, I see that it's coming from a place of truth. It's coming from a really beautiful place, and that resonates. That comes through very clearly.
Thank you.
There's another question. When is your next Bollywood movie?
Oh God. Well, when is India going to open up? Like, how are we even going to shoot a film? I mean, because I still have a place in Bombay. I still have the same place. Have you been to my house? Did you come up one night? One night I found everyone, the whole cast and crew in like Baril, just on the side of the road, like they'd gone out, and I was like, everyone come to my house. But I still have my apartment in Bombay, and I miss it so much. And I think it's this weird thing where I'm like, COVID, do I have to remotely let that go? You know, like, am I going to be able to go back? And I haven't. I've been shooting everywhere except India. And yet I pit stop, change my bags there because I've got this umbilical cord attached to Bandra and my apartment.
Yeah.
Because despite everything, that was the one constant in my time, and it was my savior, that apartment. You know, it was my home. And the four walls. It's funny how place turns into your family.
Yes, I definitely feel that too when I think of my time in Bombay, and it's this place, like, it's this feeling I've locked away in my heart, and it's so special. And whenever, you know, even just thought of it, my body just feels electrified. Right? It's so
funny. We all have like these stories of real disturbing trauma that is associated with Bombay, but yet, and I remember there was an actor, Vinay Pathak, and he and I were doing small parts in a film together, like, you know, in my first early days. And we met in New York, and I was rancid at Bombay. Like, I had the hardest first 6 months there, like gone from everywhere to booking a lead, like right off the plane, to then nothing, and then, you know, like finance falling through, and then all of a sudden, you know, when you kind of used goods in India, like as soon as it's like this person's been seen, you know, and just all of these kind of things, and the commoditization of me as a person was really getting to me. So I was like angry. The anger had started, and he was like, there is no place like Bombay. Like, he's like, I miss it so much after 3 weeks away. And now I understand that. But I think you have to really like have ragrod in Bombay. Like, you need to have really known the ins and outs of that city. And it's like, and that's probably why people don't have empathy there initially. When new people come, you know, the veterans are like, okay, you go through it, you need to go through it. You know, whereas when I was new, I was like, people are so unempathetic. They don't care. Like, I'm sleeping in this dingy PG.
Definitely. It's a city. I really agree with what you said. Like, you have to go through it to experience it, because I too also went through that, you know, especially when you've never lived in India. I've never lived in my home country. It's a very different way of life. And when you try to adjust to that, that in itself, you go through this incredible, I mean, I can speak for myself. I went through this really incredible journey of almost finding myself in a different way, finding a part of me that I didn't know that I had before. It's very interesting, but I think it's what you said, the umbilical cord attached is a beautiful way to put it. I really like that. I'd also like to just know a bit more about your experience with working within Bollywood and working on international projects. And, you know, what are your observations and your kind of feelings towards the two?
You know, I'm so grateful for my time in Bombay, because the time that I was starting my career, where I knew I wanted to be an actor, there were no brown people working internationally, you know, like very few. Gurinder Chadha, who is now I would say a mentor of mine, and I'm grateful to have been a part of Beecham House, which is her series. She was probably one of the few, you know, and we'd all look at Gurinder Chadha, Mira and Deepa Mehta.
Always,
you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
The holy trinity.
Exactly.
And so we all had that, especially as girls. And then when I had, you know, did Besharam, I did Hawaizaada. Both of the films didn't do as well as they were predicted to do, but both of them were also very tough experiences on set. Like, there was a lot of, it was hard. Let's put it that way. Like, it was hard being the girl from Australia who didn't have family in Bollywood, who didn't have, you know, the heritage and all of those things. And I got here on merit, you know, so I found that I had to really soul search to get through the process. And then the last film that I decided that I was going to take a break, but I got offered a film called Begum Jaan, which was directed by a guy called Srijit Mukherjee, who is a Bengali director. And he was making a film about sex workers at the time of partition. And that is when I was like, you know, what I need to do in order to be true to myself is to move away from this archetype, because it was kind of like a symbol for what I was facing off screen. Whereas you have to fit into this archetype, these valorized ideas of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be feminine, what it means to be desirable, and where on the spectrum we sit, and what we're portraying to the community at large about what it means to be a woman. Whereas Begum Jaan, all of a sudden, it's like, no, you're an angry sex worker who has been, you know, who's experienced sexual trauma, who's fighting for what she believes is, who's unashamed of her profession, and a band of women who are fighting for their space physically, but metaphorically as well, at the time of partition, which was a decision made by men, by you know, imperialist men, and then delegating to officers who were taking that job from them. So the women were like the lowest rung on the ladder. And yet these women in this story were so powerful. So for me, I almost use it as a vehicle, as an actor, to really vent a lot, because it was a very, very vicious film in a sense. And, you know, I'm shooting, I shot, you know, scenes where I'm gang raped. I shoot scenes where, you know, you have to be uninhibited in what you're doing, and very, very sure of what you're doing, and particularly in an Indian environment. But I was very lucky. I was working with an actor like Vidya Balan, so it brought credibility, and it was amazing to just have my hero to be Vidya, you know, not pandering to wants and needs of the parochial patriarchy that was, you know, perpetuated on these sets. It's a lot of P's. Parochial patriarchy perpetuated on these sets. No wonder they were like, improve your giggle, you talk.
But it sounds, I think what you're describing is that, you need to find those projects that allow you to really share what, you know, makes you tick, and really, you know, work on those stories where you're able to, number one, express a part of who you are, but also try and leave something with that, right? Because at the end of the day, what we're doing is a form of self-expression, right? And I think when we disconnect from that, we lose out on a huge potential that's there. That film looks incredible, and it really, really looks, I mean, it's an important film. That's all I can say. It's an important film.
Yeah, felt that way. But yeah, then to answer your question, I made the decision after that. Like I was on a flight. I did a flight I did a film in Manali, like an indie film. I was already starting to work on like a lot of indie stuff. I'd already shot Lion, which was like a tiny part, but a great film. So for me, it was just time to be. It's like I enjoy saying I'm going to do something I'm told not to do, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But I was like, okay, you
I
guys
understand.
wanted me to be a good girl, then I played a sex worker. Now you want to, you know what I mean? You're saying I can't be an actor when I'm brown. I'm going to go and do it. So then I signed my first Australian TV show called Pulse. I'd already done an Australian film in India around the time that we met. Save Your Legs, I don't know. Yeah. But yeah. So then after that, I haven't really, apart from the umbilical cord to Bandra and Bombay and my beautiful community of friends there that I miss dearly. I haven't really looked back and gone back, but you know, I want to now because I think the industry is very changed, and I think that there are fresher voices in there, and you know, it'd be really nice to shed the epithet of the shameless girl.
Yeah. But it's true. I think there really is a change, right, that's happening. I mean, I definitely, I also feel that just kind of being away from it and going in and out, that even when we look at the storytelling around us, and especially today, and especially in this moment where the consumption of content is just through the roof, right?
Yeah.
So there's such a greater opportunity where, it's right in front of people.
Well, it's democratized storytelling, and I think that was what was key. There was a you know, it's like the oligarchy of creators when you and I were there maybe before that transition happened.
Yeah, I think
it was just sort of it. Actually, in the moment that I said I need to like change something, I saw that wave of transition happen. But it was interesting because I think it was happening all over the world. I think what was happening with this globalization of content was that the rest of the world was waking up to the fact that you couldn't just have white faces on their screens.
Yeah, exactly.
So everyone was looking for new voices, and everybody was appreciating that the monolith of culture that they had been, presenting to everyone no longer was relevant. So for me, I have sought that expression in the cross-cultural content and in building intercultural links through the work I do. And it's been really nice to be, I mean, Pulse was a culture shock. It was a culture shock to come back into a show in Australia. I was like,
I'm sure.
What's going on? You know, like I didn't realize how Indian I'd become and how much I, was used to the way the world works and the set works in India. And that was great though, because it was retraining my adaptability skills and all of that. And now, and I think you'll know this, once you've worked in India, you can work anywhere. Like you can deal with any situation. I'm like, I was in LA once and someone was like, so do you think you know? I was like, dude, like there is nothing I can't handle. Trust me.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Oh my God, Adrian Jacobs. Okay, so speaking of that film, Besharam, my key makeup artist has just signed in. I think that's my Adrian.
I also know him very well. He was actually, so we met during my wedding. Him and Asif did the hair and makeup for my wedding.
Well, they were my team for Besharam.
Well, we love you.
And he just missed it. He was the one that got me ready for that moment that I was saying, which was like the childhood dream come true. Right. Adrian, somebody asked what my favorite moment of Besharam was, and Adrian and I went through a lot in that film, but I said it was the moment that we shot Lutke, because it was the moment a childhood dream was there. And I have my year 8 maths teacher here as well. Hi, Mr. Newman. So he would attest to the fact that this has been a childhood dream, because I used to do Bharatanatyam when I was like at school assemblies. Everyone was like, does anyone have a special talent? I was like, I do Bharatanatyam.
So I would like to ask you one more thing, that how do you prepare for a role? So, I'd like to know a bit more about that process, and what is your process that maybe could, inspire other young actors out there?
I think that it changes film to film. Sorry, I'm also like reading.
Yeah. A lot of Adrian says you were the first few heroines who trusted us.
Oh my God, it's true. It was like this very, very intense, beautiful moment for all of us, I think. Well, especially the three of us, because we were all new to the industry. So, you know, you go through, and Adrian, you'll appreciate this. I was talking initially, I'm like repeating the whole thing for Adrian, but the idea that, you know, I come from an environment where it's the underdog, you know, that you stick up for, whereas we were in India, there was this kind of idea of hegemony that keeps getting perpetuated. But anyway, it's like totally different to what you just asked me. I'm now getting so distracted. But okay, so how do I prepare for role? It really, so first of all, I travel a lot for my work, right? And I think what really helps me is the isolation that I have usually. Like I've never, it's been a long time since I sleep in my bed and go to work in the morning. Do you know what I mean? So when I'm in a city, I'm there for a role. So all of a sudden I do kind of become a little bit method. Like I do say, like I just played a character for a new Netflix show in the UK. And just little things like, how does she brush her teeth? What music is she listening to? Last year, I played a girl called Georgie Berman set in 1985 Sydney in the red light district.
Oh, beautiful.
In a TV series called Les Norton, you know, one of my favorite jobs ever. And, you know, Georgie was brash and she ran the books in this underground casino, and, you know, all the boys would come in and she would handle them, but she was dressed like she was straight out of Dynasty, like she's hardcore.
Wow.
But I started listening to all these 80s dance songs, and like I have this Jane Fonda playlist. So now I'm like an 80s baby, and it was the music. It was me going, what was Georgie working out to in the morning? You know, what was she listening to? What was she thinking of when she went to breakfast? Who was she watching on TV? So for the 80s, for the period, it was really easy actually, because there were so many reference points.
Right.
And I think, you know, I use music a lot. These are external things, but it's a very internal process. It's very hard to describe. Obviously, it's emotional. It comes from deep within. But there are these external tricks sometimes that I use that just help me have fun with it. Especially when I've done a lot of period work, like from 1985, I've done 1795 was Hawaizaada, 1947 was Begum Jaan, 1795 Beecham House.
Amazing.
You know, I very rarely got to play just a contemporary woman.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of being Indian looking, you know, like, you know, you often are not placed in certain parts of history. They can't see you, which is why I think Les Norton was great, because I could show that Indian women existed in Sydney in 1895, beautiful. 1985. 95 was Hawaizaada. Anyway.
But that's so true, what you just said. That really kind of opened my eyes up, that we don't have that representation coming through in our history of Indian women. We don't. No. And that's a really valid point. I actually wanted to ask you that if you could time travel, so if you could do a film where you could time travel into any era whatsoever it could be, but you were making that film within that period, let's say, what would it be? What era would you want to, if your career had to span over that time, what era would you want to be making movies in?
I think the height of the Mughal Raj, you know, but I would have to be like super privileged.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I don't want these like bricklayers making the Taj Mahal. No, like I'd be Mumtaz. Or not Mumtaz, was it Mumtaz Mahal, right?
Yeah.
Like make me that thing. Although she had passed by the time he was making it. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's just popular culture that's given me that impression.
Yeah.
But you know what would be amazing is if there was a time, almost like, you know, in the time of the Mahabharata, where you do have like these idyllic societies that seem to be operating when, you know, the Vedic philosophy was actually being enacted, so to speak.
Right.
You know, and before, in a way, because my whole life is kind of marred by cross-cultural angst.
Yes.
In a sense, that's maybe a time where that may not have existed as much. Who knows? I mean, obviously there were kingdoms warring and there was classism and casteism, but just to live within the bubble of like, I don't know, Ram and Sita times.
Yeah, that's
that's
beautiful.
The Mahabharata, that's around mine. Mahabharata is like full on war.
Well,
just
there
like going
somewhere.
up to
We know
battle.
that.
That would be a documentary as Krishna's talking to Arjun.
Oh my God, imagine. That's so interesting.
He's like a late night chat now.
So we have about 15 minutes left. We can either do some fun questions, or maybe we can open it up to people that would want to ask some questions. I think that we missed a few, but maybe we could open it up. Is that intriguing? And then I could just throw a few questions.
Whatever you tell me.
Okay, guys, if you have any questions, pop them into the comments below, and we'll be happy to hear them. Till then, I'll ask you a few fun questions that I was curious to ask. Okay. So if you were going to work on your favorite movie, so this was going to be the most favorite movie of your life, right? Of your career, you're there, and this is your absolute dream project. What would it be called? What would the title of that film be?
Oh, wow. The title. I thought you were going to be like concept. The title's harder.
Concept, title, anything whatsoever.
Well, the concept would be a dance film. I'm dying to do it. I think my biggest regret about not working in India anymore is that I miss dancing. And I think even in India, I didn't dance enough, you know. That was why I started. That's why I'm a performer.
Right.
So it's weird. It's kind of like become something else for the sake of making a living, I guess. But yeah, probably, I don't know, dancer, nacho, nachos, and
that's brilliant. So you need to add that onto your list. I'll be waiting to see you next in an amazing dance movie.
Nacho.
Yeah. And what is it, as a director, I'm curious to ask you, what if you had to describe your favorite director style, so the approach that a director has with you as an actor, how would you describe that?
I have a really interesting shorthand with certain directors, you know, where you just go like this and you know what it is. I'm a very like visceral person, so, and I'm a very like, you know, I was doing some work today in the studio and I said to my director, I was like, no, like we didn't even have to say anything to each other. I went, that's crap. But you know, I love a director that's quite specific, you know, like I like specificity because then you can move within the specificity.
Right.
And you find what you need to. When it's super broad and it's super like just feel what you're going to feel in the moment and stuff like that, it's harder because we're actors. We're actually trained to hone our emotions, so you have a much wider ambit. And it depends on so many things. It depends on the way that director shoots. Like, do they do like major close-ups? Do they do wider shots? And you know, you can do a whole take of the whole scene in a wide shot, and it's like a play. You know, you have directors that love to go in real close and micromanage, and you actually don't know what's going on. They're like, don't do anything, you know, and that actually freaks me out slightly. I'm just like, but yeah, and it's a lot to do with your co-actors as well. Like it's very much the chemistry that you bring to a scene with them. And yeah, I think a lot of the work also happens before we get to set. You know, you really have spent a lot of time with your director. You've broken a lot of barriers. That's where the shorthand comes. It comes from going down to the pub and drinking 8 beers at a Friday night before and being silly, and everyone like being without the veil of what it is. And I think that's what was hard in India actually, because it's very rare that people will break down that barrier, because there is a lot. Maybe they do, maybe it's just that I didn't have that access, but I found that tough. And that was one great thing about Begum Jaan, because I had suggested to the director that we did this activity amongst all 11 of us who were playing the sex workers. And I said, let's all just spend a day talking about our deepest, darkest secrets in a safe space as women. And we did. And you know what? On set, it was like we'd lived together for 10 years.
Exactly.
And I think for that kind of a film, you need that.
And I think that's super important. What you said is just, how do we break our veil, right? When we're talking to each other as two creative artists, where we have a mutual respect for one another. When we have the courage to do that, we really get the potential that's there. We understand what's there, and that potential is mind blowing. There are things that you would never know, because you know that just kind of stops you. I have one more question that okay, so this is a bit of an interesting one. So if you were to write your own definition in the dictionary, okay, for the word woman, what would you write? You can interpret that however you're comfortable.
An infinite spectrum of possibility.
Oh, I love that. An infinite spectrum of possibility. That is beautiful.
Because it can be anything, you know.
That is absolutely beautiful. I really, really like that. Okay, let's just do a quick one-word answers, okay?
Yep.
So in one word, I'm going to say a word and just describe whatever you feel, whatever comes to your mind in one word, okay, as an answer. When I say life.
Life. Dance.
Acting.
Emotion.
Art.
Life.
Freedom.
Australia.
Curiosity.
It's woman, weirdly came to my head.
Beautiful. Heart.
Me? That comes to my head. I think I'm very inward right now. So yeah.
Dreams.
Dance.
And now, what do you feel right now?
Joy.
Beautiful. That's amazing.
Really nice. So that's a great exercise. As a director, do that with your actors always. It's great. We used to do this thing, Aishman and I, when we did Hawaizaada, we did this thing where you just stare. Have you ever done that with your actors where you stare at each other and you just have to like keep talking about what you're thinking? It's scary.
Yeah. So I do a lot of improv, right? So in improv, you learn so much about, which has helped me both as a director and as an improviser to be present. And I think what I've learned from this entire conversation and what I will take away from it is the ability to be present and to be able to just take that mask off and be you. And I think that is exactly what you are, presenting and what you do and what I admire about you as another woman sitting there going, I'm not cheerleader going, you go girl, because that is what I want to see more women doing.
Thank you.
It's electrifying.
And not be vilified for it, because, my second guess, someone just said, Vishal just said, I wish to see in light-hearted comedy films. Me too, Vishal. I remember like Irish things, we're going, you should be doing rom-coms and stuff. You're just like a dorky, funny girl. I'm like, everyone thinks I'm so intense. This is the thing, right? It's like, it's either or. This is another issue that I found, which was like, if you're one, you can't be the other.
Right.
This idea of binaries. I'm writing a book right now. I don't know if I've told you. HarperCollins is publishing it in Australia, and it's about this stuff. It's about intercultural communication and living between two identities as an actress. So it's very on point. Like that's why when you message me, you're like, what should we talk about? I was like, how about this?
That is amazing. And I would definitely want to read that, firstly. Secondly, I think it's something nobody talks about. Like, I have probably never even spoken about it. I was making a film about, the emotional impact of terrorism in India and talking about, what do human beings experience? But I never really spoke about what I felt as a woman or as growing up from different cultures and living in my home country. I think there are a lot of women and men who have amazing talent who are spread out all over the world that come from our backgrounds. And I hope that, when voices like yours talk about it, it can really, really, really open doors.
Thanks for saying that, because I do wonder, because sometimes it's as we discussed right at the start, there is a specificity to being a woman who's in the creative field, who lives between two cultures and has had to negotiate identity, all the time. And it's not just woman, and it's not just Indian woman, it's also foreigner in your own country in both places, and being educated and having a voice and being trained to use that, and then having to negotiate when you don't use that because you might intimidate somebody or you're not partaking in the status quo where you are. And this is a constant navigational minefield. And I really had a lot of fun with it, but also a lot of suffering during my early 20s, because there was no one to have these conversations with. It was not valid to think like this. And I want to make sure that the next generation of young women, because of which there will be many who come from different parts of the world. And I think, you know, we're in a unique situation because the world is we grew up in an analog era, and we have had to adapt, right, to what this and this interconnectedness. Anyone who henceforth goes into the world will be so much more aware, and there won't be the level of ignorance that we grew up with. We grew up in that kind of post-baby boomer life, you know, where we were the first bastions of cross-cultural living, in a sense, with privilege, that is, as equal, as trying to negotiate what it is to go to law school with people. Someone goes, why that accent? I'm Australian, man. Why? It's like, this is what I mean, right? People are like, you have accent, man.
I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, and Vishal Davis.
Okay, you know who's just joined this chat is Lisa Stoleko, a very close friend of mine, is the first Indian Australian cricketer, female cricketer.
Wow.
She was on the winning side when the Australian women's team won the World Cup. Super, super inspirational. And Lisa, I need to speak to you about something. I have an idea.
That is amazing.
There we go, God. Lisa. Don't ever change your accent. I'm so glad that she came on right when someone started dissing my accent. I hosted the IPL 4 years ago for Sony ESPN as part of my like coming out as an Australian.
Yeah.
When I just told Indian people that actually I'm Australian and I wasn't just like talking like this all the time. And Lisa was with me at that time, and it was just the best. We were just on the plane being like, who are you? Who are you? And another example of women saying, you know, yes to other women and not being dickheads about it.
Exactly.
I just I've got one Australian here, so I think that I can use the word dickhead.
But that's the thing, right? Isn't it? So it takes so much energy to shut that other person down. You might as well use that energy to lift them up and bring people together. We have about 2 minutes left. We can either carry on, or we can, you know, put this to a close, however you're comfortable. I would definitely, and I think the greatest initiative of why this thought came into my head during these crazy COVID times is to try and inspire younger talent, because I have a lot of passion for that, because I think we all have someone along our own journey that supported us, that helped us, that, you know, made us feel like we could be who we are. I definitely felt that working on my first film, straight out of film school from London, coming to Bombay, no idea what I'm doing, you know, and meeting someone like you on set immediately made me feel like, oh, I can, you know, I feel safe. I can be myself. I would really like you to just give a word out to the younger generation, whatever you feel that you would want to, you know, a message for them during these times, especially.
You know, I just think, you know, it sounds really cheesy, but believe in yourself, because people will not know your power. They will not tell you that you have power. You know that you've got power, and you need to know that you have power and agency and a voice. You know, I think no one's going to tell you to shine. People will, all you're going to do is know that you're meant to shine, and then you're going to hear these voices telling you not to. And if you listen to those voices, then you're screwed, basically, which is what I went through. So keep your shine. Don't ask for permission to shine. And if someone's not giving it to you, just be like, okay, man, like, just, you know, it is for your own sake, this life that you lead. You're not doing it for anyone else. You're doing it for yourself. And I think that we are so marred by, you know, what society thinks, particularly, you know, I'm sure most people here have got Indian heritage. You have these pressures of what it is to be, and are we going to get kicked off like any
second? So I'm just going to do one more.
Oh my God, long time no speak.
Oh, yeah. Way too
long. No, I was just saying that, you know, I think that a lot of what I don't have to say it so quickly anymore. Oh my God.
No, you don't. You have time don't worry, take your time.
I just think that a lot of
Sahil's online. Sahil.
Is he joined the thing?
No, he's watching us.
He's just going, why are these two girls talking? And
yeah, exactly. With his humor,
we're just gonna heckle him from afar. Yeah, no, I think, you know, it's really funny. I think a lot of people might have joined that actually won in the previous live, so it's probably worth telling them. we've just gone over our previous live chat. Here we go. So much chit chat, science, I knew it. I knew that would be a heckle.
You know us, Sahil. You know exactly how we are.
He missed the full-on serious chat, and now he just thinks it's like he's just not saying anything. I think we need to bring it back.
It's all thanks to you. I mean, that's what we were saying, that we had the chance to meet each other and connect and go through the madness of it all. So, you know, thanks to you. And anyways, you love us talking nonstop. So
he missed our super pro-feminist kind of like really intense, but like.
Can I tell you a really funny experience that I had with Sahil? My interview when I came in, right? This bright-eyed girl being like, great, you know, I've just come out of film school and, you know, I know it all, whatever. Like, you know, you have that entire thing with this, like, this passion when you come out of film school or college. It's crazy. And he goes, okay, so, you know, I'll give you a chance. I'm like, thank you so much and stuff. So this is my cultural barrier. He goes, okay, so can you just arrange for the tempo or something? Like, can you make sure the tempo is there? So I'm like,
you're like, tempo?
Yeah, I'm like, what song are you talking about?
You're like, where's the metronome? Tick, 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 tick. Oh my God. The first time I met Sahil Sangha, we're just talking about Sahil now. This is great. Because you know that there's that scene in LBZ where Radhika puts the coaster down and she's like really OCD, like So this is age in life when I was super polite and like, you know, trying to be the good girl and everything. So I walked into his office. Actually, he was very chill compared to most people, but I put my coffee down and I put it on the table and then I flipped out and then I got a coaster and I put it underneath because there was a pile of coasters and he just looked at me and goes, there's a scene exactly like that in the movie. Like, I think that was just it. Like, after that, I was like, I've got this role. I nailed that. Because often in Bombay, you know, they want you to be, not Sahil, but in general, they want you to be the person. They expect you to, you know what I mean? There's not like an acting audition. Yes. It's like, are you the person who is my character when you walk in the door? Which I found very strange. I was like, no, I will become that person. Anyway, I'm going to let you lead the rest of what's going on here.
Well, I would really love to open it up to some questions. I think that would be interesting, guys. So just pop your questions in, whatever it is. We've obviously today been focusing about, you know, working between two different worlds, working as women between different cultures. Maybe you could also, why don't you share one of your most memorable and exciting moments in the process on set, on any film, it could be any moment, but where you really felt like, oh, this all makes sense, like how you said, okay, that was my childhood dream coming together, you know. Oh, actually, we have a great question coming in. Okay. The end photos asks, how was it working with Vidya Balan? That's a great question.
It was phenomenal. It made the whole Bollywood thing worth it. No, as I said earlier, what was great was that on that set, my hero was a woman, you know, and such a strong, supportive woman. And it was almost like all the mentors and all the strong women that I hadn't come across until that point were subsumed. That experience had been subsumed by the fact that here was this woman who's a massive star who understood what it is to come to this industry from the outside.
Yeah.
I think that was a key thing for me because, you know, whatever you may say, there is a different lens through which you are perceived and through which you perceive your colleagues when you don't come from that privilege. Yes, I'm privileged. I'm Australian. I came from abroad. I have a foreign passport. All of that. I would never have starved in Bombay. You know, that is privilege. I accept that.
Yeah.
However, you're an outsider and you're either in or you're out in that place, really speaking. So to watch how Vidya had with so much grace, you know, used her wits and her brain and her talent to with so much dignity get to the place she had gotten to, and then envelop 10 younger actors under her arms, in her arms to make a film. And you know, there's some tough scenes I have with her in that. You know, I'm actually her antagonist in the film. I play Gulabo, and Gulabo is the she's like the angry young sex worker who is rebelling against Begum Jaan's rule in the house, and she doesn't like Begum Jaan. And Begum Jaan is always, and Gulabo is like the earner. She's the most popular prostitute in the house, right? So there's a scene where Gulabu says that she doesn't want to go in with a dude who's saying that मैंने पैसा कबूल कर लिया है, तुम जाओ अंदर. And she says, "नहीं मेरा पेट विच दर्द है, पेट विच दर्द है," which means I've got a stomach ache. And so she literally has to grab me by the neck and slaps me.
Wow.
To say, you know, you got to go in, and there's violence, and it was this scary moment where I'm like acting with a stalwart. You know, as an actor in those moments, you can, as the audience sees one thing, but as actors, we're shitting ourselves. Going,
yeah.
Going, this is real shit. Like, I have to be good.
Yeah.
I can't be bad right now.
Yeah.
And I had gone through a lot in India where people didn't want me to believe I was a good actor. You know, like I knew that people had told my director not to cast me in Begum Jaan. And he had said that to me. He said, "Tum jaake na sabko kuch baat do iske baad scene ke baad," or something. Like, he was just, because there is that shaming that happens when you haven't succumbed to certain pressure and all of that.
Right.
So I was just that support, knowing that she'd been through that as well. She'd probably walked onto a set once upon a time and shut herself. And she looked at me and she said, "Don't disappear. You always seem to disappear. I don't know you well, but I know this about you," which is very true. Because I have had the option of leaving, and I do leave to do projects and come back. And unfortunately, I haven't done a film after that. So I always want to reach out to her and be like, "I don't want to disappear."
That sounds like an amazing experience. I think, you know, when you have that chemistry with your co-stars and you have that support and you're coming from that same ethos, or that same, just that mutual respect is there. It's amazing. It's really, I think also as a director, it just, when that team comes together, I mean, that's where the power is. It's everything that's off screen that you can bring on screen, right? That track.
I think it's really important not to patronize people that are newer and younger than you. You know, it's a very scary place to be. You're putting your emotions on the line for public consumption, your body, your face, everything. It's a very vulnerable position. I love actors so much. It's something I've really understood, is like, I love actors and creators more than any kind of person, because you understand there's a resilience about you and an emotional kind of gumption about this breed of people. But I think what I found also is that in some elements of the industry, there's that, again, that cloak, that veil of, you know, perception, and that overrides the very human thing that we're doing there. We're storytelling about human emotions, and especially in the dramatic stuff. I mean, comedic stuff as well. But yeah, and I think going back again to your question earlier about dramatic, about directing styles, one thing I didn't mention is I think it also changes based on whether it's drama or comedy. And I've done both, and I love doing comedy, but I end up doing more drama. And I think that, I think that it's worlds apart. The set is so different. I'm in Tom and Jerry, which is a new film coming out.
Tell us a bit about that.
Who knows if it's going to come out? I don't know what's going to happen.
Tell us about
that was, that's great. That's very exciting. It's like that's probably one of like the big moments where I was like, this is legit. Like, I'm actually an actor now. Because I think I still don't believe it about myself. You know, you just constantly feel like a fraud.
But you know, your humility and how you carry yourself, and the way you keep it authentic to you is what I really admire about you, and I really respect that, because I think honestly that's, for me, that's what I feel the principles are that are needed. And when I look at other actors and filmmakers around me that I admire and I respect, I find that common thread that, you know, when you're humble, you're hardworking, you know, you're never kind of, it's not about the external. This is not about fame. This is about a craft. And this is what I need it to fulfill me. And it's, I mean, I really respect that about you, honestly.
Thank you. I mean, and it took a while to like actually shed that mask, to go, okay, you know what? I'm so uncomfortable being cool. Like, basically, I'm uncool. Like, let's be honest. Like, I would be a terrible cool person. I was not, as I said, like, I was the dorkiest person. I had like a full monobrow. I was brown and hairy, and like there were like blonde tall chicks around me when I was growing up. So like, I was intrinsically not meant to be the most popular girl in the room. Like, I might have been the smartest girl in the room.
Yeah.
But so this is the thing. Then you go to India and Bombay. It's like you're not allowed to be the smartest girl in the room, but you're allowed to be the most popular girl in the room, and you have to be that. And you're like, so for me, actually, it was a complete reversal of identity that I was grappling with, even on that level. Forget culture and womanhood, but just in terms of how you see yourself. Like, I never saw myself as the epicenter of attention because I wasn't. I was always on the periphery. I lived in the margins of a minority in a white country. And this is one of the things that I bring up in the book, is this idea of like marginalization and how that affects whether you see yourself, and the kind of decimation that happens internally because of how you're perceived your whole life. And then what was happening in my experience as a woman in India was this kind of quiet decimation because you're looked at from an external point of view only.
Exactly. And I think what you're highlighting, where you can find a part of that process and make it yours and be able to have that, protect that, is where you're able to sustain yourself and where you're actually able to feel happy, and you're creating this work and you're satisfying all the areas. But in that, at the end of the day, you're taking what you need from that for you, right? I think that's something that even for technicians who are behind the lens, we go through that. Directors go through that. Producers go through that, where we're always kind of stuck with what is expected or what should it be, but do I want that, or am I? You're always, it's this little voice in the back of your head that's always yapping away. And I think it's a process.
And I think I think we have to become more comfortable talking about this stuff. I think it's great that you and I are having this dialogue, because there aren't very many people that I can say, look, these are the negotiations that I have to go through. It's not just about turning up to set. It's about how you see yourself. It's about what you're telling others about how they can see themselves. And I think that the art of filmmaking and storytelling is always beyond just the work. It's not just about that work. There's a greater storytelling that's at play. And I think it's how you look at your role within that narrative is very important in how you end up behaving in your job. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
I would absolutely love to have the chance to work with you at some point. Hearing everything what you're saying, like, I am just so happy that there are amazing women out there like you with this mindset, with a mindset to actually open up and talk about things, and not open up and talk about things from an external aspect. Like, it's real, right? We're being raw right here. And I really, really value that, because I don't think we do that enough. We try to represent raw stories, right? On the screen, we try to say, okay, we're going to be raw with the characters. We're going to be, tell raw stories and really get people into that world. Someone said it's their birthday. Will you please?
I know, I saw that too. I was like, happy birthday, buddy. It was my dad's birthday 2 days ago. You guys know.
Happy belated birthday to your dad.
I did, you know what I did? I woke up and gave him breakfast with champagne and did the dance. And then I saw that, I come back to Melbourne and I basically go to the village, like.
And tell us a bit more about Tom and Jerry, since, as you were saying, so we stopped at it being,
So live action movie, hybrid live action, so coming out like with like animation and humans. And I play a character called Prita. She's American, I can't say too much. So it's a bit cheesy, but I actually can't say too much. It's just going to be a really fun family film. Anyone that loves Tom and Jerry will get a kick out of it. But Michael Pena, Chloe Grace Moretz in it, Rob Delaney, who's one of the funniest dudes out there. Colin Jost, who is he's one of the guys on the Weekend Update on SNL. And he plays, we play opposite each other, and just great to be back on. It's also nice to be on like a really big set again. I was like, this is what Bollywood was like, guys. None of your like indie stuff that I've been doing. This is what I'm used to.
Like, how does it feel? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, because you come to Australia, you do a series, and it's a bit like, can I have a cup of tea now kind of thing. Like it's, you know, so it was just great to be back on a set. And I was like, I'll have a coffee now.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know what type of coffee I want. Just give me all of them.
It is really different, right? I mean, I can understand that because I came from experiences within film that had nothing to do with, you know, the big kind of Bollywood setups. And I too was like that. I'm like, wait, I don't have to go to the craft station to get myself like a cup of tea a bit, right? And I'm like, you know, so
okay, imagine what it was for me, like, because I've been treated like an on-set hero.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Just like bee's knees. You get whatever you want. Like,
yeah, exactly.
People will like, take your shoes off for you when you get out of the car. I had like an Australian colleague once be like, dude, you're like treated weirdly like a princess or a queen. Like, this is bizarre. And I was just like, it's just normal. It's just how we're treated, you know. This is very normal. And it does make you, this shows how, this is maybe where I was like, this can't be me. I came to Sydney for a talk that I was giving, and it was like, you know, really nice. We were flown at the pointy end of the plane and all of this. It was like very nice stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like baggage carousel in Sydney, and I could see my bag, and it just went around and around. And I was just sort of like, obviously jet lagged and spaced out, but I was like, why is my bag still at the carousel? And after everyone had left, I was like, oh, I have to get it off the carousel.
It's true though.
I'm so ashamed of my behavior, and I tried to crack a joke about it to someone, and they were just like, that shit doesn't fly in this country, as if like I was the foreigner. And I was like,
yeah.
Look. So then after that, I overcompensated at every job. I'm like, can I make you a cup of tea? Like,
it's true.
There's a very famous video, not a famous video, I'll send it to you. It's a behind the scenes shot from Besharam, which never got released, of me making chai for the entire set.
Oh my God, I'd love to see that.
Everybody was like, what the hell is going on? Madam Chai bana rahi hai. Like, freaked out.
Yeah.
Freaked out.
It's true though. There's so many, I mean, there's such a different set culture everywhere you work, right? And adapting to that is challenging. For example, I faced that when I moved back to Dubai and I was shooting commercials. I was like, where's everybody else? Like, what's going on? Right? You know?
There are 500 people just hanging from different things.
And there's always like 2 people for the job of 1 person, and then everybody's just talking about it, and then you're like, is it happening? Is it not happening?
Yeah. No, but the best is like if a light needs to be changed, and then your DP is like, Ramo isko badal do. And then Ramo was like, Raju isko badal do. And then Raj is like, Raksha usko badal do. And then eventually like some dude on a tree would be like, hey, ho gaya sir.
Exactly. But that's what I think for women like us who have come
and then there's like chicks in the middle of it being like, how was that for you as a crew, like on the crew side of things?
So when I first moved, honestly, like I am extremely grateful to Sahil, because he really understood kind of who I am, like who I am as a person and what I'm coming with. And I think he really helped me integrate myself into the work life within Bombay. I struggled a lot.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you're a very beautiful woman. Did you ever find that was a hindrance to you being taken seriously?
Many a times, and especially working. So I was working as an AD. I did Bollywood productions. I worked on MI4, and I loved it. You know, that's where I felt a bit more comfortable. But I had this challenge within myself that how do I overcome this? Because I'm not going to let it defeat me. I need to find a way to grow and find this new learning within myself, because I had points where working as an AD was one thing, but then working as an AD, I was almost like, oh, I'm the NRI who went to film school who thinks she knows it all. No, I'm just like anybody. You know what I mean?
There is that thing that people are looking at you thinking all of this, that the classic Indian thing is ye kya samajhti apne aap ko.
Exactly. And then when I started working as an AC, and I was doing track and trolley, I was working as a focus puller. Like literally, I would have, you know, the camera department, like the attendants, when I would say, okay, like, you know, get the tripod on sticks, like get the camera on sticks, let's move. And there's a language, right? In the every culture, set culture has its own language. And they would just look at me and laugh, like to my face. They would just burst out laughing. Or then the best thing I learned was in the beginning, they used to make fun of me in Hindi. So they would say, oh, ye to Russia se aayi hai. In my head, I'm like, I'm not Russian. Like, do I look Russian in any way? And then I started to realize, I reached out to a family member and they said that should be your strength. So I used to pretend that I didn't know Hindi. So when they were talking, then I used it to my advantage, and then I would reply in Hindi and be like, I know exactly what you're saying. I'm here to work. Can we please move? And that went on for like 2 years. It was hard.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I never used my Australian accent initially, and I would only speak in my Indian accent. I'd speak in very Shuddh Hindi when I was doing interviews and stuff. Like they'd be like, "Aapko Dus Tola mein kaam karne ka kya anubhav raha?" And I was like, "Dekho, Geeta to badi saral si hai, ek suhani si," and I went into like full 1800s.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't believe that I was Australian. And so it didn't make sense to them that I had this like very powerful presence and voice, because it's like, where's this person randomly turned up from?
Right.
And particularly because there are a lot of NRI actors in India who don't speak Hindi, who didn't speak Hindi.
Yeah.
And made that kind of fashionable in a sense as actresses. And, no disrespect to anyone, but they were kind of given their own like brand of the kind of NRI actor that comes from India. I didn't fit in there either.
Yeah.
Because I'm so Indian, and I look very Indian. I have darker skin, whatever. She's very dusky.
Yeah.
Classic. Just classic. But and I spoke Shuddh Hindi and all of that, and was saying the namaste. So people could not place me. And that was really interesting when someone finally said, if you had just gone with your foreignness, people would have given you a lot more respect. Because, bahar wale ko zyada bhav milta hai in India. But I just didn't want to play that post-colonial game,
Yeah.
I was like, no, I've come here because I want to feel rooted, because I have a love for this country and this language, and I have missed it and I've longed for it. So what greater way to be part of it than through the creation of its culture?
Exactly.
So it was a pretty different, particularly a decade ago, like it was pretty different, environment. I think that was also the height of like the Bollywood kind of pizzazz.
Yes.
Or it was like the apex before it was about
to
fall.
Yeah.
When I did.
And I think what you're saying in terms of the stereotype of what you're meant to play, right? Like in the sense of who you are, as like, it's this projection of identity. You come into the industry and it's a bit like, okay, this is the box you're going into. And I really love that you were like, but this is who I am. I was kind of in the world where I didn't even realize there was a box going on. I was just being myself. And I was like, well, this is who I am. For example, for me, I've actually never made an English language film that was like, that was public. That was just all film school stuff. But all my work has mainly been in Hindi. I'm directing in Hindi. I'm working with actors in Hindi. And yes, my Hindi is not where it would need to be, but this is who I am, and I get my job done. It doesn't need to be at what you want it to be, right? And in the profession that you're in, being an actress, you're in the front, right? You're right out there, and it's just that pressure it's a lot. It's a lot to
and it was interesting because I do chameleonize, like, because if you do watch any of my films, you would never know that I was Indian, right? That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
And I've dubbed every film of mine, I've taken no extra, I've never had a diction, like all of this weird stuff that was going on. And I was like, dude, you're either an actor or you're not. What is this weird? Anyway, that people.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah.
I'm saying, like, there was a fashion to learn the tropes of Bollywood. Like, how is your body? Have you been dancing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm Bharatanatyam Hindi speaking, but Bharatanatyam dancer who speaks Hindi. Like, I came ready. I'm ready.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, because of that, people now, like, shame me for being Australian. Like, oh, you have to accent Malvi. So it's like, what's weird then is this reverse racism or this reverse prejudice where I have to justify the fact that I'm actually an Australian woman.
Yeah.
And a lot of my followers are Indian. I don't have a strong social media presence in non-Indian Hindi-speaking countries. So you're going, how do I be myself for this audience now that's only seen me like that? That's a conundrum that I face, because my authentic self is like a kind of daggy Aussie woman with a very like Gharelu Indian streak.
Yeah.
but not enough people know that. And that's also because I was very much hidden from the public eye by my producers, because they didn't want me to have a voice. You know, they wanted me to just do my job and like be the hero and who knows what she might say kind of thing. But anyway, sorry, this is like therapy now. This is great. With like a public audience.
Yeah.
in my pajamas. And my dad's still.
But that's what's amazing, right? COVID in itself, this whole time that we're living in, is bringing out such a different way of how we communicate with each other. And what I'm enjoying about it is that I feel like the masks are coming down so much more.
Yeah. I feel that someone was like, hi, how are you still alive?
What?
Some guy's like, hi, how are you guys still alive?
Yes. So I know we've been on for a while. I think we got carried away. It's been so long that we haven't seen each other. But
this is the way we chose to have a reunion. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Just reunions on live from now on.
Yeah.
But unless there's anything else that you'd like to say, I think I will close it off.
No, this is great. This has been awesome. It's been such a nice way to end the week, actually, and very inspiring to hear all about your work. And we will make this happen. We're gonna have to work together.
I would really.
I love this person. It's called Van Photos. I want to know a little bit about you. Are you male, female?
It's the Van Photos.
Because this follower of mine is around a lot and knows me quite well, I think. And it's very interactive. Lots of like
Okay. Are you male or female?
I don't interact enough on Instagram. I'm really bad. Female, there we go. I thought you might be a female. Thank you for all the love that you give me, by the way, and get all your female friends to follow me. And we need to switch the balance of my followers. I was doing a podcast the other day, and someone said, "What's happening with your followers?" I said, "Actually, I've lost so many followers." And they were like, "Why?" I was like, because I think they're all guys, and I used to post a lot of photos of me on the beach.
Oh, God.
We need strong women. I want strong women voices to be a part of this tribe.
It's amazing, Pallavi. Honestly, today has inspired me so much. I feel like even though so much time has passed from us meeting and being together, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like we were just sitting on the side of the set, sitting together and having a nice chat. I really appreciate very much you taking the time out to be a part of this small initiative that I'm trying just to bring people together, to bring amazing artists like yourself, amazing women like yourself together, to really try and build a bridge where, you know, we can inspire one another, we can lift each other up. And I think that's the learning I've taken from this conversation from you today, that be who you are. No matter whoever is going to try and change that, you have your own path, and, you know, you're the one that has to walk down that and create that. So I really appreciate your time.
No, ditto, babe. Like, it's been so nice to hear your voice and to have a woman that wants to ask these questions of another woman and to have this kind of interactive space is very sacred and special. So let's keep it all open and bring more into the fold and break down any of this like crappy icky barriers. And I can just, it's so, like, I love the comments. Someone just said, this is the longest talk since Modi's election speech. I wish I could just be like, lockdown in 4 hours, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But lots of love also to everyone that joined in and came back for the second live session and asked questions. You know, neither of us would be here without you.
Exactly. Neither of us would. And thank you so much for taking, that's my dad that's saying God bless. Thanks for watching, Dad. And my mom should be in here too. My dad's actually a photographer, so I got a lot of my
your visual artistry.
Yeah. He actually has something really interesting.
Are they in Dubai, the parents?
Yes, they're in Dubai. My dad actually has sent his photographs to space. So this is the family I come from. His photographs are inside the International Space Station. He had this one dream where he said, I'm going to send my photos to space. And he chased it for like 15 years. And about 2 or 3 years ago, he got them up there. And I'm like, Dad, what do I have to do? Do a screening in space, like a film screening?
You can't talk that. Sorry.
Yeah.
He's actually just Trump. We should all just quit. Right.
Exactly. But I think that's what it is, right? That when we inspire one another and we leave those footprints for the younger generation, it has a much bigger impact than we know.